and welcome to God's Hookups television show. This is Dr. Barbara Young, your host, and this is a show that features up close and personal interviews with guests from all walks of life who share their stories about unexplainable blessings, successful events, and extraordinary miracles and encounters that can only be of God's hookup. You will receive hope, enlightenment, encouragement that will feed your spirit and your soul. Now, to my guest today. Hello, Dave Sanderson. How are you?
How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. You know, Dave, we are in commemoration today because on September 11th in 2001, our country lost almost 3,000 people in terrorist attacks on both New York City and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and a plane that was brought down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. So people from all over the world perished in these attacks. On God's Hookup show today, we pause to remember and honor the innocent men, women, and children who perished on September 11th. So a minute of silence. Thank you. Today on the show, we have my guest, Dave Sanderson, who in January 2009 was one of the last passengers off the plane that crashed into the Hudson River, best known as the Miracle on the Hudson, considered to be one of the most successful ditchings in aviation history. Dave is an extraordinary man. He's accomplished much. He founded his company, Dave Sanderson International. He's a sought-after international speaker, and he helps emerging leaders align their purpose through their leadership skills. He also has a new book that's coming out. Oh, and I love it. It's called Moments Matter, which he's going to share a little bit about that today. So call your friends, tell them they must view the show, or they can download it later, and we'll talk about that. But now I want to hear from my guest, Dave Sanderson. Greetings and welcome to God's Hookups today.
Thank you, Dr. Barbara. Excited to be here with you today. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Dave, you know, you have a lot to share. You got a lot of God hookups, but the most, I think, famous one was what happened on that plane. My goodness. We go back to, was that in January 2015?
January 15, 2009. So 11 years ago.
Okay.
11 years ago.
Yeah.
It was 11 degrees that day in New York, and it was cold. It was one of those days that, you didn't want to go outside. But I was very fortunate to get on an earlier flight because I've been out for 3 days, Dr. Barbara. I was wanting to get home.
Yeah.
And I changed flights, so I wasn't supposed to be on that flight.
Oh,
so I think God wanted me on that plane for a reason. I truly believe that. He wanted me on that plane for a reason. And I gave up a first class seat for seat 15A. So I was the reason I was on that plane, but it was nothing extraordinary. But, as we know the story, about 60 seconds, you heard an explosion. And, I didn't think there's anything about it until I heard the captain say his words, "This is your captain, brace for impact." And that's when I knew it was serious. And, of course, at that point in time, you don't know what's going on because the day's 9/11. And as we talked about, it's when you have a plane that's going down in the New York area, people don't know what's going on. So those moments were very, sort of very challenging. But, as we crossed over the George Washington Bridge, I did two things. First thing I did is I prayed. I prayed, whoever that dude is up front, just get me down. Second thing I prayed for is the last person I spoke with to call my wife, tell her I loved her. And third thing is I prayed to God to forgive my sins. I don't want anything between me and God. We're going down, and this is probably the last moment I'm going to have. I want a clear pathway, right? I don't want anything between me now. Let's get this thing cleaned up right now, right?
Right now.
And then second, I reached down the briefcase, got my wallet, and shoved it into my pants. So when they found my body, at least they know who I was.
Wow, you were prepared then. You were really, really.
Well, I've seen a lot of things where people didn't have any identification on them. And at least I wanted my family to know I was on the plane. So then I put my head down, and it was about 60 seconds after we crossed over the bridge and we crashed to the river. And it was a hard hit, but, we survived. But now you have part two. water's coming in the plane, and the water was 36 degrees.
Wow, that's right.
And it's coming in the plane. So, my game plan when I was going, one of the last thoughts is aisle up out. That's all I said, aisle up out, aisle up out. But when I got to the aisle that day, Dr. Barber, something happened, not only changed that day, but changed everything. I heard my mom talking to me. Now, my mom passed away in 1997. But there was something she would tell me when I was a child, is it popped into my head at that moment. It was, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you.
Wow.
And the right thing for me was you take care of other people first. See, one of the things I thought about after that moment, I said, my mom didn't say do the right thing. She said, if you do the right thing. And one of the gifts my mother gave me, Dr. Barber, was she made all of our kids make decisions young. And have consequences for decisions. It was a great lesson for me.
Yes.
And I don't think enough parents, including myself, teach their kids right now to make decisions, because we make them for them because we want them to have an easy way. But there's a reason behind that. So that's why I went towards the back of the plane, got behind everybody else, and just started making my way out. And it was about chest level deep water in the back, because the back was already underwater. And then I saw light on the right side. So I said, time to get out, time to go. And then I looked out, and it was an amazing sight. There was no room on the wing for me because it was filled up. There's no room on the boat. So that's why I was inside the plane, waist deep in 36-degree water for about 7 minutes.
Wow.
And then
what's going through your mind, Dave?
Well, that time, now you got to focus, right? Because one of the things that doesn't get talked about is the right side of the plane. It was managed by the passengers because the crew member who was supposed to be there got injured. She cut her leg. So we all had to focus in. And that I tell people, at that moment, all the skills that you have come together. And that's what happened. But about 6 or 7 minutes, all of a sudden I felt the plane shift. And the first thought that I had was Titanic, because this thing's going down. And I thought, do not be sucked down in a plane. I mean, if you remember the movie, it sucked everything down with it. I'm like, don't be sucked down in a plane.
Right.
I always stop. I thank my mom and my dad, because they had made me get swimming lessons when I was a child. I mean, never been able to get off that plane. And that was one of those things that your parents do things for you. Those moments, we talk about moments matter. That moment back in 1970 when I had to learn to swim paid off 40 plus years later. So I swam to the closest boat that I could find. It was 36-degree water. And it was the longest 10-yard swim of my life. But I also tell people, not only is it 36-degree water, but you've got jet fuel now that's been out in the water. That's why I wear glasses, because I got jet fuel in my eye.
Oh, wow.
And no one knew that till I got back, and they found black spots on my left eye. That's why I got glasses.
Oh, my goodness.
But then, fortunately for me, I got on the ferry, and I thought I made it. I said, I made it. But that was my moment, Dr. Barber, because, one of the groups I love speaking for the most are first responders and firefighters. And of course, being out in California, you've seen the firefighters. I mean, they have to go at it, but then when they're done,
yes,
they don't have anything left.
Yes.
And that's happened to me. I had nothing left, and it was not only 36-degree water for several minutes, but 11-degree air. I was so cold I could barely breathe. But then somebody came up to me. I tell people, God puts people in places for reasons. Because there's a gentleman on this ferry with a gray suit laptop, but he had an iPhone and put it in my face, said, call your wife. He dialed the phone. All I could get out, this is your father. I've been in a plane crash. That's all I could get out.
Wow.
And my wife wasn't home because she was taking our son to basketball practice at church. So my daughter, who was then a junior in high school, got the message, and that's how my family found out.
Wow.
So there were so many things that happened that day, but I believe God was there each moment. I think God lifted that plane up. I have a picture of God lifting the plane up, holding it up until people got out, and then letting it down into the water. I think this is a message for everybody that I'm still here. I'm still here.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. How did all of this happen to have you turn your life around as a result of that, to step into your purpose? Because you were doing something else.
Yep. I was sales.
Yeah.
I was a top sales producer for a big company, a technology company. And, I still did that for a while after that. But, there's a lot of things that happened. I'll tell you the moments, because this is what I talk about in my talk. There was a moment that shifted and made that thing happen. And it was the Sunday after the plane crash. The Sunday, That's the Sunday following the plane crash, because the Sunday after the plane crash, I went to my church. And I was there with my family, but there's a gentleman who came up to me. He was the head of men's breakfast. He said, Dave, will you speak at men's breakfast next Sunday? I said, no problem, man. 50 old guys eating pancakes, right?
Yep.
But I didn't know they invited half of Charlotte, and 500-600 people showed up, and they ran out of pancakes. And I tell people, I'm a Methodist. I said, it might be all right for Catholics, Episcopalians, and Presbyterians. You can run out of food, but if you're a Methodist, you better have some food. So now I have hungry, angry Methodists, right? What am I going to do with this? So I went behind the curtain, Dr. Barr. I said, God, give me something to say. Give it to me. Deliver. And he gave me something to say. And I to this day, I tell people, I don't know what I said. This is 3 days after a plane crash. But, I said whatever I said. I was talking to two men, but there was this elderly lady in the back of the room. Caught my eye. She's probably 70, 80 years old. Caught my eye. Walked up to my left and grabbed my left arm really tight. I'm like, oh, what's going on, right? But then she looked me in the eye, Dr. Barbara, and said, I was questioning if there really is a God.
Oh, my goodness.
And I don't believe in miracles. But you are physical evidence that there is a God. And he does miracles. Thank you. Thank you. She let my arm go, looked me in the eye one more time, walked away. I've never seen two men cry like this. I had two men crying in front of me. And my minister was behind me, witnessing all this. So I look around him like, what's going on? And all of a sudden it came to me. What happened to me on January 15, 2009? He now impacted somebody before she goes to her great beyond, wherever that is. Now believes there's a God who does miracles because I am physical evidence. And that's what set me on my journey. That was what I call the point in time that changed everything for me, that moment. And I think you look back on it, I've never seen her again at the church. No one has.
Maybe she was an angel.
Maybe she was an angel. So you never quite know, but I think we're all on that plane for a reason. And God is using me in a way that he wants to use me right now. And I tell people God opens pathways for people.
Yes,
and if you don't take the pathway God gives you, he may never trust you again. Right? God opens it up for a reason. And I took the pathway. And that's why I do what I do. And that is why I'm here with you today. That moment.
Did people start to ask you to come and speak? And you went on that path, start speaking to people about your experiences and what did you learn from that? What are you sharing with people today who are floundering and maybe were church going? Like, obviously you were in church,
right?
So it wasn't like you were not going to church, but something happened to really call attention, to strengthen your faith, to know he's up there and
right.
He pulled you out of there, turned you around for a different purpose that he had for you all along. Isn't that amazing? So
it is amazing. I'll go back 10 years today, to this day, 10 years ago at 9:00 a.m. Eastern time. I was invited to keynote the 9/11 services that year. Now, we're on the East Coast, and it's a very reverend day. And so you had dignitaries from the government, you had military, you had law enforcement. It was amazing. I mean, the amount of people. And here I'm keynoting. So I took my minister and my assistant Tammy with me, because my minister had never heard me speak outside the church. Now we're in sort of a public forum, right?
Yes.
And I'm giving thanks to first responders. That's basically what I did that day. I still do that to this day. But as we were walking back to the car, my minister looked at me and said, he goes, as you were talking, I was thinking, it's like you went into that water one way. He said, we're Methodist, and in the Protestant faith, we believe there's one baptism. He goes, but it's like you went in that water, and all of a sudden when you came out, world opened up. It's like you were rebaptized. He goes, and all of a sudden you found your mission, and God gave you your mission. And he got it, right?
Yes, he did.
He got it. So I speak a lot about business. I speak a lot about leadership, because I think everything starts with personal leadership.
Yes,
Jesus, I mean, whether you believe in Jesus or not, I do. Jesus was teaching personal leadership skills to his disciples, teaching them how to lead leaders. But they had to lead themselves first.
Right.
And some of them had challenges, as we know.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, Even to in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus is there, he knows it's coming, and he tells his disciples what? Stay awake, be aware.
They couldn't
A
do
leadership
that.
lesson, and they couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
They couldn't do it even when he gave them a leadership. Stay awake. This is part of leadership, is staying awake, and he couldn't do it. So this is what my mission is teaching these personal leadership skills, because right now, so many people, like you said, are in fear and have a lot of uncertainty.
Yes.
And my goal right now is, in my TED talk that I gave, it talks about how to grow from traumatic life experiences. That's my TED talk. And there's a term called PTGS, post-traumatic growth syndrome. And it's how do you grow from a traumatic life event? And we're all in one right now. Every single buddy in the world is in a traumatic life event. Uncertainty, fear. So my goal now is to share strategies on how to grow out of this. And like you and I were talking, it starts with optimism.
Absolutely.
So
Dave, what I'd like for you to do is to share a little bit of strategies, a few of the strategies that you talk about, how you grew and how people can grow from their own personal plane crash.
Thank you. So I'll share two quick strategies. First one, and this one really is, I think, is probably the premier one, is I talk about the power of meaning. The meaning you attach to something produces the emotion of your life, and emotion is your life. So if you can learn how to change the meaning, flip the meaning, instead of being half empty, half full, and just change it, recalibrate the meaning, you can change the course in the direction of your life. And that's what one of the things I help people do, is help people change the meanings that they focus on.
Okay.
Second, this is one of the reasons, this is probably the reason I wrote my book, Moments Matter. And this is a great lesson I learned. So where I'm sitting, right when you're seeing me where I'm speaking right now, I was sitting. My wife called me and said our neighbors down the street, there were two elderly ladies, needed some help. They need to get help with their TV. Now, I'm pretty good with TVs. And my wife said, will you go down there and help them with their TV? I said, of course, right? They're two older ladies, plus they're your neighbors, right? You're supposed to help your neighbors. I grew up in a small town where everybody was a neighbor. So I go down, Dr. Barber, to help these two elderly ladies, and it wasn't that big of a deal. I turned them on and helped them get to them. I said, will you stay for milk and cookies? I said, I love milk and cookies. Who doesn't love milk and cookies? Especially from two older ladies who could probably bake, right? I mean, I'm all in, So as they're getting milk and cookies, I was sitting in their parlor, and they had this table, and they had all these books. So I started flipping through one of these books, and there's pictures of World War II and concentration camps. Now, I love history, especially World War II history. I think history repeats itself. So I learn as much as I can about history. So when they walk out with these milk and cookies, I said, hey, where'd you get these books? I've never seen this. They said, well, we were there. And they rolled up their sleeve and showed me the numbers down their arm. And they said, we were there. They were in Buchenwald. We survived.
Wow.
And I said, tell me the story. I said, can I film the story? I said, no, but we'll tell you the story. For 2 hours, Dr. Barber, I sat and listened to a firsthand account how these two ladies survived a concentration camp while the rest of their family perished. And I came back to, I was sitting right here, and I called the person that was helping me write the book. I said, Cindy, I got it. I figured out these ladies got the strategy. They made every moment in their life matter. They figured out by just the mindset that they used and using these tools in themselves, they survived one of the most horrific situations in the history of the world. I said, this is our book. This is why we're going to name the book Moments Matter. And all of a sudden, I learned that's the strategy. So one of the strategies I also talk about, Dr. Barber, and I do this, is if I talk to somebody who's going through a challenging situation and they just can't get out of that funk, I said, let's talk to somebody. Let me call somebody over in Ethiopia. Let's talk to somebody in Ethiopia. Somebody who is happy to have one meal today. Let's put things in proper perspective. So one of the things that I do is help people hook up with people. We talk about God's hookups. This is a God hookup. Well, I hook up people with other people who've gone through worse things so they can put them in proper perspective and know there is hope if they're resilient and have an optimistic perspective.
Well, I really want to thank you for sharing that, a few of your wonderful, wonderful lessons learned and strategies that you can share with people. I love the story of the two women who learned to make moments matter, because none of us know how long we're going to be here. I mean, you were on a plane and just coming back from a sales trip or something like that, and you're like, la, 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 I can't wait to get home, see my wife and kids. And then this happens. That changes your life. But this book, Moments Matter, where can people get your book?
Well, I would love, they can go on Amazon, or they want to get the book on Amazon, and it's there. And, you know, if they want to get a personalized copy, all you got to do is go to my website, davesandersonspeaks.com. I'll personalize the book for them. And my next book's coming out. It's called God Gives You the Lessons When You Are Ready. And that's coming out in November. And we're really excited about that one too, because it really expands on Moments Matter, about some of these specific moments on how you can use these things that you learn from mentors like yourself and employ those in your life.
I just put it up where they can get it, Moments Matter, and your website, your email address, and website address where they can get in touch with you.
Thank
One
you.
of the other things, Dave, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today, was the fact that you have shared that you are doing some things in an African country. And I really wanted to just share that with people to show how we can always help somebody else, and how you're doing something that's creative and it's coming up in October.
Yep.
So just share a little bit about that.
Thank you. I was very honored. I'm working with an organization and out of Vancouver, British Columbia, that we're trying to help a village in East Uganda in Africa, who's right now in lockdown situation. Plus, they have 348 families that just don't have anything. So I was asked to be a part of this, and it's a gala we're having. It's called Night in Africa. It's October 9th. Be more than happy that we'll have it on our website. I just send some information out, but I'll be keynoting that night and talking how important it is to help people, especially people like who are in a situation as you talked about. You've been in Africa.
Yes.
These people have nothing.
Yeah.
They're happy just to have somebody send them some tennis shoes. So if they would join and just contribute, whether it's time, it's going to be an auction, but I'll be keynoting that night. I think it's 7 p.m. Eastern time on October 9th. I'd be honored if someone would just check it in and, help somebody in Africa, because you never know. One day, like I tell people, I help the Red Cross. One day, that day may never come. You may be the one who needs that help. And we all want to help each other. And right now, it's about helping each other.
Never know.
That's right.
But, I thank you for all the work that you're doing. And Dave, you and I had a chance to meet and talk, and I was so impressed with you. And I'm just really happy to have had you on the show today, because you have a remarkable story and you're doing remarkable work. And that's what this is all about. And so for those of you, all of my listeners out there, you have heard this remarkable story of courage and how Dave benefited from a defining moment to create his purpose, and not only that, but his passion. And how today he is able to share from that story. And then now a book, Moments Matter. I was so touched by that. And I hope you are too as well. And I hope you'll take advantage of getting that book, Moments That Matter. And as we go through this pandemic, let us not forget to reach out to those who are in need. Dave is reaching out to another country. Maybe there are people in your neighborhood. Maybe there are people around the corner, or that that are in need of something that you can help. It's time. Reach out. And remember, you too can benefit and rebound from whatever situation you are in today. I'm reminded, as Dave and I can both know, God knows about you. He knows your address. He knows where you live. And he'll help you no matter what you may be going through. So this is Dr. Young on God's Hookups, and just sharing my heart. And as Dave did, both of us just want to say, we love you. We really, really want the best for you. And again, in Dave's words, which I love, even though we're going through COVID-19, out of this, you can create your own flight plan for the future. So I want to wish all of you God's blessings as we continue on this journey together on God's Hookups. And I'll see you at 1:30 when we have another show that's coming up. And until then, I wish you God's blessings. Goodbye, and I'll see you next week with another show, but I got one coming at 1:30 with Jewel Diamond Taylor. Don't forget,